Before we start this video, a large thank you to David Gosland, Ying, and Kent for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And, as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner for their immense and continued support of the channel this month on Patreon. You are a legend, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we are going to cover status effects, so things like poison buildup, bleed buildup, frostbite, etc. So here I'm in Nephilim. I'm just going to open my dev menu, and I'm going to apply something called poison buildup. So if I go down here and find poison, where is it? There we go, apply buildup. You can see a bar has appeared below my character, and it's slowly ticking down, so it's decaying. Now what happens if I apply that a couple more times and that bar goes right to full? So I'm just going to apply poison buildup 2 more times. And when I click this, you can see my character has become poisoned. So the idea with buildup is you have a limit, and if you keep attaining buildup and pass your limit, you get affected by a status effect. So let me just show you one more time. I'm going to go in here and apply a frost buildup, and you can see a little blue bar will appear below my character. So let's go and click apply buildup frostbite. You can see there's a little blue bar. It's slowly ticking down. Now I'm going to shortcut and just fully apply the frostbite status. I'm just going to bypass the build up here just to show you. So if I were to become full of frostbite status, this would happen. So we're going to do the same thing in our project. I'm going to cover poison and bleed. And if you guys want, I can cover a couple more. But how we basically add the build up on is identical. But what happens when the build up becomes full is a little different depending on the effect you want to go for. All right, let's go into our project. And I'm just going to jump over to our enum script. And I am going to create a new enum. So before I do that, I'll just talk a bit, and while I talk, I'll minimize all these menus here. What we want to do basically with this is keep track of different kinds of buildups. So we're going to use the enum for that. And then we're going to create an instant effect that will add a buildup to the character depending on the type. And that's what we use the enum for. And then we're going to give our character a bunch of buildup stats on the network as a variable and just basically increment those up or down. And that's what we're going to do to start. Keep it very simple. So let's make a comment here, and I'm going to say used to determine buildups, or we can say buildup status effects or types, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to make a public enum here. I'm going to call this buildup. And just for the sake of the series right now, we're only going to do 2, so I'll add 2. But again, if you guys want me to do them all, I can certainly cover them all just as they are in Elden Ring. I figure with 2, you guys will know exactly how the system works, so you can do that yourself. And you should definitely try after the end of this video to go on ahead and do things on your own and give it a shot. So if you think you have a good idea of how to move forward, then pause the video whenever you feel like it and basically take a whack at it yourself. But we're going to continue, and we're going to go to the character network manager, and we're going to copy one of these floats, any of these floats, and we're just going to make 2 new network variables, and they're going to be obviously of type float because I just said to copy a float. We're going to make a header for them and call it buildups/status effects. I just like saying buildups, but some people might call them status effects, whatever you prefer. You can call it whatever you want. You call it current poison buildup. I'm just going to call it poison buildup, keep it simple. And then I make one bullet right below that, and I'm going to call it bleed buildup. Make sure you defaultly set it to 0. There's a weird thing in Unity where if you want to change the prefab, basically versions of this variable, and you've already set it, you have to remove the script and re-add it. It's just with network variables, it's strange. So now I'm going to create a mono behavior script. Going to call this take buildup effect. Now this is a 2-part system basically because you have the initial apply the buildup, but then you have the decaying of the buildup over time if it's not being applied, which is going to be a new effect called a timed effect, because right now we only have instant character effects, which is what this one is, but we're going to make another system for timed character effects before the end of this video. So let's start off very simple. You can see if we go into any other effect, we have our process effect. We're just overriding this. So okay, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go over here in take build effect, and let's override process effect. So because of the nature of this effect, it's only called once, and as the name would suggest, it's instantaneous. So let's make a header for buildup, and let's create a buildup type up here. And we're only going to need 2 things really, the buildup type and the amount. Well, I guess 3, because we need to give it an effect ID as well to keep track of it. But you know, primarily for the execution of the functionality here, 2 things. So the type and the amount. And this is going to be quite simple. I'll just initialize the amount at 10 just because we're going to change that anyway whenever we instantiate this effect. So what we want to do is do a simple switch statement, and we're going to basically iterate through the type and then add it to the character's proper variable. We're going to make a function for that though. So let's make some pseudocode here first. The first thing we want to do is add the buildup effect to the affected character. right? Then we're going to check if the buildup has reached its limit. We have no way of doing that right now, but again, this is just pseudocode and planning. So if the buildup has reached its limit, then we want to then apply a new effect. So this is going to depend entirely on what kind of buildup is happening. Poison will obviously apply the poison effect. Blood loss will apply, I believe it's called maybe hemorrhage in Elden Ring, or blood loss. It might be blood loss in Souls, I can't remember for sure. But it's all the same, depending on whatever you want to do there, you're going to take a different route. So poison would add a timed effect called poisoned. Blood loss would just be another instant effect. So let's just go here in number 1, and we're going to say character.characterEffectsManager.add buildups. And I'm going to open up some brackets here, or we're just going to say buildup type and the buildup amount. Now this doesn't exist yet, so we're going to go ahead and make that. So I'm going to copy this, and then we're going to go over to our character network manager. And then we're going to, character effects manager, my bad. And we're just going to minimize everything here, and I'm going to make a new, just right below the add static effect here, public virtual void. I'm going to say add buildups. You can put this in the character stats manager too. That's honestly, there's a good argument for that. It's appropriate. I guess you're affecting stats directly, but because this is an effect, I feel like it belongs here. So public virtual void, add buildups, buildup type, and the amount. So first off, if the character is not the owner, return. The reason why I put this here is if you want to sync up your effects on server RPCs, you don't want to actually allow the modification of network variables if you're not the owner. But maybe you have some other stuff happening there, and for some reason you want to sync up your character effects via server RPCs, that's valid. We're not doing that right now, but just in case. So for poison, 1, check if the character is already poisoned. This is a to-do list in the future. We can't do that right now because there's no way to keep track of for poison. If they're poisoned, return. Then we're going to say character.characterNetworkManager poison buildup plus equals the amount. And again, we've switched statement here into the buildup type, and we're just adding the amount to the proper variable on our network variable. Now let's add a to-do. We're going to pass these values through a resistance, kind of like your armor absorption. So you can have poison resistance and bleed resistance, or I believe Elden Ring has it all in one stat. I forget what it's called, but it's affected directly by your vitality, robustness probably. So you can pass this through a filter for that, and then you can kind of increment the value up or down depending on that. But we'll add that on a to-do list because right now we just want to actually make sure the system is working first, and then we can pass it through some defenses that we'll make in the future. All right, let's save that. That's good. Now back over to the take buildup effect. Number 2, you can check if the buildup has reached its limit. Well, we don't have a limit right now, but let's still do a switch statement, and then we're going to create functions for each one. These functions are where the check is going to happen. So for poison, we would check for poisoned status, and for bleed, we're going to pass character, by the way. This doesn't exist yet, but we're going to make it in a moment. And for bleed, we would check for blood loss status or hemorrhage status, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it blood loss status. And now, number 3 will take place in each of these individual functions, where if the buildup has reached its limit, we need to apply a special effect. Okay, well let's make 2 of these functions now. Check for poisoned status, and then we make it require a character manager variable. We're just going to call this character. And then we can check for the blood loss status, and we're going to do pretty much the exact same thing. Just make it require a character manager variable, and nothing's going to happen right now. We're just going to lay the framework for this. So check for blood loss status. Okay, cool. So this is where, like I said, you would check to see if your buildup limit has been reached, and if so, you apply the special effect. But also, if you don't have a buildup effect, like a decaying effect, you want to add it here as well. So pseudocode, if the character is poisoned, return, obviously. This is check for poison status. And then 2, we're going to say here, add the, what would I call this? Because we don't have a timed effect yet. So we'll just say check for a timed effect. I'm going to put it in bracket or quotation marks. A timed buildup effect of this type. Because remember I said, once you add the instant effect, you need to also decay that effect over time. So this is where we check for that. And if we don't have it, we add it. That way the player is not holding on to poison buildup for eternity until they're poisoned. So if that effect does not exist, make one and apply it. And then we're going to say, right here, number 4, if the character, almost said player, but of course this can apply to both. If the character is over their build limit, apply the poison. And then you would want to get rid of any of the build-up too, so that's not there for next time. So we're just going to say, apply the new timed poison. All right, that's a good set of comments. That's a good direction on where to go. I'm gonna put in brackets here number 2 as well. We add a timed buildup effect. So the buildup can decay over time. So this makes it go down basically every second or so. All right. Now the same thing would be applied here to our blood loss, except you wouldn't check for poison, we'd check for the blood loss effect. So now let's create an asset menu up top so we can actually make this. And we could say menu name is equal to character effects, I believe I called it before, and then we had instant effects. So let's say instant effects, and then I'm going to call this one take buildup. Actually, we'll call it take build effects. I'm pretty sure that's the naming convention I use for the other ones. So I'm going to save that, go to our data, and then our effects folder, go to instant effects, and right click, create a new character effects. There it is, instant effects, and take build effect. So I'm going to make 2, and I'm going to make one for take poison buildup. Now, you could just make 1 and change this enum when you instantiate it. That's perfectly valid too. Or you can make 2 and reference which one you want directly. I think I make 1 in Nephilim and then change the enum, but I don't remember for sure. I'm like 90% sure. But I'll make 2. We'll keep it really simple. I'll go to the World Character Effects Manager then, and I'm going to make 2 variables for these, and I'm going to add both to the instant effects pool so they get their own ID. So I will go up here now, and I will make 2 take buildup effects. Let's make a header for these. We'll call it buildups. I'll make them public because we're going to need to instantiate them. So buildup effect, take buildup effect, sorry, and I'm going to call this poison buildup, and then one for bleed buildup. As a note, you should probably actually call this take poison buildup because we're going to have the timed effect later on as well, but maybe I'll come back and change that. I'll see how I feel. So bleed buildup effect, save, and now I'm going to drag them in. So again, to alternate view, you could just make 1 buildup effect, and as you instantiate it, change the type to whatever you want. That approach is equally valid and would save you variable space. So let's go over to the player effect manager, and I'm going to make a quick debug thing here so we can make sure this is working before we move on. So header debug delete later. What are we going to do? Serialize field bool, apply poison buildup, and apply bleed buildup. And I will say that unlike the last video, this system has been rigorously tested, and I'm just copying Nephilim verbatim. So this should go smoothly, unless we find a new thing in here that I've not seen in Nephilim. But I've had this probably for over a year now, nearly, since I added effects in Nephilim for the very first time, probably longer. So we're going to say on update, if apply poison buildup is equal to false, and then we're going to create a new take buildup effect variable here. Buildup is equal to instantiate World Character Effects Manager instance, and I'm checking Nephilim now, and I did use 1, and I changed the buildup enum type, but we've already got 2 here, so that's okay. We'll just keep that. So I'll just set the buildup type or amount to 25, and then I'm going to say character.character effects manager, and we're going to apply the instant effect. Let's make this protected on the character effects manager so I can use this from the player manager because it inherits from it. So we can say character effects manager, process instant effect, and we pass our buildup. Now let's just do the same thing for bleed and change the variable of poison buildup effect to bleed and change the flag for apply poison buildup to apply bleed buildup. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to, obviously. I'm just doing this to make sure it works. It's good to test this while you're doing it just so you can see. But also if you test it, you can probably get a better understanding of how all this fits together. So it's definitely not a bad idea. So let's save that. Let's go back to the project real quick. I'm in the game. I've applied it. You can see my bleed and poison buildups are at 0. If I go to my player effects manager, let's just do poison burst. And if I tick it, boom, it goes up to 25. Tick it again, boom, goes up to 50. Okay, cool, that's working. Now if I tick my bleed, same thing. We know that the effect is being processed properly. Now we have no timed effect right now, so it never decays. And that's not ideal. So let's create a new script under our effects. Let's call this timed character effect. And we don't have anything with this yet. This is gonna be the base class for our timed effects, much like instant effect is the base class for like take damage and take buildup. So let's make this derived from scriptable object, and let's make it require a namespace. And if you wanted to, you could even make these 1. You could make timed effect and character instant effect derived from like character effect. I'm not going to. Don't really need to. But if you want to do it, you can make them share an effect ID. So let's go down and add public int effect ID. We're going to need this to check if a player already has a timed effect on them. And then we're going to make a header for time. So we can make a public float for default length of effect, and then we need one for our current length of effect. So we can say public float time remaining on effect, and the default length is what it's going to be set to when the effect is actually instantiated. So what's this going to require? Well, we're going to make a virtual function just like on our instant effect called process effect. It's pretty much the exact same thing, except this one's going to be incremented multiple times, usually once every tick, and typically I do a tick every second. So we could say time remaining on effect minus equals 1, because again, I'm going to call this once every second. And then we're going to say if time remaining on effect is less than or equals 0, we want to remove that effect. So we're going to say character.character effects manager .remove timed effect. This doesn't exist yet. See, we have remove static effect. We do not have remove timed effect. So I'm going to pass the effect ID because we're going to need that. So let's go ahead and just like make our public virtual void remove effects right here, because we're going to call that from the character effect manager as well. Make it require a character manager variable. And now we can go make remove timed effect. Let's actually go set up everything on the character effects manager for our timed effects, everything we're going to need, possibly forever. So header, timed effects. So you can see we have like one for static effects up there. Do the exact same thing. Make a public list for timed character effects, call it timed effects, or whatever you want. And then we're going to initialize it as a new list. So we're going to need a few functions for this. We're going to need a add, remove, and check if one is already there, because sometimes we want to modify one that already exists on the character. I'm going to make a comment down here for timed effects, and actually while I'm at it, I'm going to move static effects together as well and make a comment for those, so it's easier to see at first glance. And if you're looking for an effect, you know, they're all in one place, it's easy to see what's going on for your functionality. All right, cool, static effects and timed effects. So checking my notes here now, Nephilim. We're going to have a few functions, I'll write them all out first. The first one is going to be a public void for process timed effect, and this is going to be called on an update function, or process timed effects, sorry, because it does them all. It'll be called on an update function every second. Then we're going to have add timed effect. Then we're going to do timed character effects effect. And then we're going to do right below that void remove timed effect. We're going to use the effect ID for this. And then lastly, right below that, we're going to do a public timed character effect check for timed effect. And we're going to pass again the effect ID. This is just going to get the effect itself in case you want to do something with it. All right, so let's make a comment here. Process all current timed effects. So if you have a bunch of poison buildup and frost buildup and bleed buildup, it'll process the decay of those over time. Maybe you have a buff on the go too that'll just increment the time until it gets removed. And then we have add a new effect, we have remove effect obviously, and then we have checks if we already have the effect. This is basically so we can grab it and do something with it. So not the same as just like checking if we have it for a duplicate. So process timed effects. This is easy. We just do a for loop and we iterate through all of our timed effects. And then we say timed effects, let's do a null just in case first. If timed effects I is equal null, simply continue. That shouldn't be the case, but just in case, it's nice to have that there so it doesn't break your game if it gets deleted somehow. Timed effects I, process effect character. Okay, cool. And then under add timed effect right here, we are going to do something similar. We're going to iterate through it in a way, but we're going to check if we already have the effect. Now, what I personally like to do is I don't add the same effect twice, but if you go to add the effect again, let's say I cast a buff, and this buff gives everyone within 5 meters of me plus 25% attack. I don't want to be able to add that multiple times because that would become busted. However, if the effect is applied again, I'm going to make a comment in here so it separates it. This gets the effect. It's not checking for a duplicate. But if the effect is applied again, what I like to do is reset the time to the default time, so it basically renews it. This is obviously up to you. I believe this is what Elden Ring does. Not sure for certain though if there's any like exceptions to that. So we're going to check and make sure the effect is not null. If it is, continue. Otherwise, what we're going to do is get the effect, and if it does already exist, we're going to say if timed effects I dot effect ID is equal to the effect ID. We're not comparing the effect itself because you instantiate new versions of those every time. It won't be the exact same one. We need to compare the ID. Effect is already on character is equal to true. Then we're going to say timed effects I dot time remaining on effect is equal to timed effects I dot default time length on effect, or default time length. So just basically reset its time to whatever it is if it was full, as if you just had it. So if you already had the effect, just restart it. We're just going to make a comment here so it's clear. Now, we're checking for effect is already on character, so we know now. If it's not, we can just make a check here. If the effect is not already on the character, we can actually allow it to be added. So let's just say if effect is not already on character, timed effects.add effect. We want to process that effect instantly as well, just so you get it. You're not waiting a second for the initial tick to happen, because you might, right? If you get that processed before when the tick just happens, you have to wait a second. But we don't want that. We want to process it right away, and then we want to set the default length first. You should do that before you process it. I'm going to quickly change that, because if for some reason your effect's length is on 0, it'll instantly remove it. So we're going to say effect.time remaining on effect is equal to default time on effect, and then we're going to process the effect instantly one time. So again, this is just so if it pops up, like I said, the effects are normally only processed once every second. When it's applied to, you want to process it once right away. All right, so remove timed effect. We're going to say timed character effect. We're going to look through all of our timed effects, like so. And we're going to make sure we check for a null in our for loop, like before. And then we're going to compare our ID. So if the time effects ID is equal to the effect ID we're passing in this, like so, then we know we can remove this. So we can say effect is equal to timed effects I. And then we can call effect.remove effect and pass the character. Cool. So next we say timed effects.remove from the list, because we could have some special logic on the effect after removing. We want to make sure we proc that. Then we take it out of the list. So find and remove any effect. Now, iterate through your list and look for null entries. This is always a good habit to have, and remove them. We're checking for nulls anyway and not doing anything, but just to keep your list clean, just go ahead and do that. We can do that by iterating through the list. And if the effect is null, we simply remove at I. So remove and remove at are a little bit different. Fun little thing for you if you want to look it up, read the documentation. They do behave a little bit differently. All right, so check for a timed effect. Now this one is just going to be, like I said, trying to grab the effect if we have it. So timed character effect, local variable, timed effects equal to null. You can do this two ways. I know you guys have been using for loop slot, but you could also use a for each loop in a situation like this. And you could say variable effect is equal to, and then we can look through our timed effects, right? And then we can say if the effect variable right now, dot effect ID is equal to the effect ID, then you know you have your effect, and you can say timed effect is equal to the effect in this for each loop. Then we have return timed effect, and you can do the same thing with a for loop here. We could just do a for timed effects dot count, and I'm just going to grab the code up here. Again, you want to check for null all the time, of course. So we're going to say if timed effects.effect ID is equal to effect ID, we're going to say time effect is equal to time effects I. So we can just break off here and then return that. And both of these will get you the same result. I'm sure that if you made it to this episode in a very advanced series, you definitely knew that. But just in case, I use for loops most of the time, not for each loops. In really weird, nuanced situations, there's definitely like a better reason to use one over the other. But generally speaking, both can get you the same result. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Thank you to my patrons, of course, for allowing me to continue the series by supporting my work. Thank you to the lovely people who share the series via word of mouth, who say nice things, who leave comments, who like it. It is because of all of you guys the series can continue at all, and I can keep making videos. So you have my sincerest gratitude. As always, I hope you all have a very lovely weekend, and I will see you next week where we will continue the status effects.